Okay, that's interesting start to the stream.
just as we start, someone decides to drive past on a motorbike.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Heritage Talk, part of the Heritage Supporters Group on Facebook. How the fuck is Matt Hancock not fired? That's what I want to
know. I think everyone in the country is wondering that, really. But I mean, it's quite interesting to know, actually, that there hasn't really been much call from the Conservative Party for him to resign. Which makes me think they've been told to just stay quiet.
Do you remember when Dominic Cummings had his little escapade where he ended up going to the castle?
Yeah, and there were calls from the Conservatives and Labour.
Exactly. I distinctly remember there were backbench Tories, at least, who were calling him out and saying he should resign. But there's no Conservatives asking for Matt Hancock to resign, even though this is blatantly a total disregard of his own rules, and it just shows a total lack of integrity to his wife and to the woman's husband as well.
I mean, there's actually quite a lot to this, more than just the fact that he had an affair at work breaching coronavirus restrictions that he set. Because the woman he had the affair with, her brother got one of the major contracts for during the lockdown from the government.
No way.
Yeah. Which, funny enough, isn't it? Plus, there's also the fact that this has come out means there's been a security leak from a ministerial office of CCTV footage, which should be worrying in the first place.
Well, I've heard it's a whistleblower from the health department, but how did they get a hold of the footage, like you say?
Exactly. I can't imagine that they just let anyone get hold of the CCTV footage.
And if you're Matt Hancock, if you could see a camera in the hall, why would you do something like that?
Well, I suppose again they expect the CCTV not to come out, and the security guards, none of their business.
Okay, so do you think this is something to do with Dominic Cummings?
Probably not directly. I don't think he's going to have been able to say to anyone, "Look, find this out." But at the same point, whether anyone was inspired by what he did and so forth, then perhaps.
Like a jihadi-inspired attack.
Not the analogy I'd use, but we'll go with it. Yeah, I don't think Cummings could exactly claim anything on this one.
But this happened on the 6th of May, so whoever's had this footage has been sitting on it for a long time. And you have to think about the timing.
This is then after Cummings has left everything around there. So how long was this going on? Was this going on before that and Cummings sort of tipped people off? And this is the first time there's been sort of concrete proof that they've been able to get out?
Well, apparently there's been Tories or members of the civil service that have noticed this for a while, them two having their little escapade, but no one's really said anything until now.
Now I think about it, I remember reading something a while ago. It was a list of unsubstantiated leaks and so forth, and they said there was a high-level government official having an affair, and everyone thought it was going to be Boris. But, I mean, all these were completely unsubstantiated. I'm going to have to go back and find that somehow and see how much of that is actually going to come true.
But we all know that Dominic Cummings really didn't like Matt Hancock because he said that we need to get rid of him or he's going to cost lots of lives. And, he basically said that Boris called him a moron. Well, he didn't say that. They had text messages which proved that. And
at the same point, I have to be fair, those texts like that, that's just an image. It can be very easily falsified.
Well, I tend to believe it, to be honest, because I don't think Downing Street. I don't think Downing Street actually said it was fake. Actually, did they? So, but it makes you think: did Dominic Cummings maybe go after Matt Hancock in the committee hearing, and because he didn't get his way, perhaps decided to release the bombshell? Because that's what I was thinking could possibly be the case.
again, I don't see where Cummings would still have that reach, as it were. Yeah, he's probably still got people on his side and contacts within Parliament and civil service and so forth. But again, maybe it's just a lot of people don't like Hancock.
Oh, well, I'd hope so, because he's the most abominable figure. I don't think he was hardly popular at all before all this happened, was he?
I don't think anyone knew of him before all this. I mean, before COVID,
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, he hasn't been health secretary for that long, has he?
No. But you think your most generic image of a politician, this pencil pusher, that's Matt Hancock.
I mean, he looks like a creep. He acts like a creep. And he is a creep. So
unsurprisingly,
everyone's suspicions was turned out to be right when it came to him. Another thing to quickly mention, we were going to cover this originally, but I think this topic's more entertaining, is obviously we got the new list of the countries which people can travel to. And you got the Balearic...
Ireland kind of tried to usurp that yesterday, didn't they?
What do you mean, usurp it?
Well, Northern Ireland released a list
Northern
of countries.
Ireland.
Yes, I believe it was Northern Ireland that released a list of countries early yesterday, before the rest of the UK.
Yeah, that's how we found out about it. So we've got the Balearic Islands, Malta, and a lot of places we don't even care about. So the British Antarctic. Anyone fancy going there this holiday?
I mean, it's better than nothing.
I forgot it even existed, the British Antarctic. Anyway, but I noticed with Malta, actually, you can't actually go, I don't think, unless you got a double vaccination.
Which, again, is the start of this two-tiered stratified society that we said was going to happen.
And Angela Merkel has recently said she wants all British people to have to quarantine. And we're noticing that...
Yeah, but Angela Merkel isn't even popular in Germany.
No.
She actually has had a resurgence under COVID, I believe. But in general, she's not that popular.
But Boris Johnson's pushing the double vaccination and the passports. And I think that's partly in response to her, because he's trying to make it easy for the double vaccinated to get travel and basically isolate the other people and not let them travel.
Yes, I've been being pestered with texts to have the vaccine and letters and so forth.
But it really infuriated me because there was actually a petition. I don't know if you signed it, and it was against the COVID passports. It said the government should not roll out COVID passports. And I think there was a government committee which ruled in its favour and agreed with us. But it said, we oppose it on the basis that it could discriminate against race, sex and gender. Yeah. It's like, no, it discriminates based on individual people's rights. It's got nothing to do with sex, gender, race, religion. It's ridiculous.
But hey, if you want to get something to work in government, you've got to play by their rules. So
yeah. But that's making the assumption that the people who don't get vaccinated are brown people or something like that, or tend to be. It's like,
yes, the vaccine uptake has been a lot lower in minority ethnic communities.
But surely, I mean, yeah, I imagine it is higher, but I imagine there's still people from all backgrounds who are aware. I mean, I'm obviously not taking it. I imagine you're obviously not taking it.
I just don't see the point.
There's no reason to, is there?
No, not if you're young and relatively healthy. I can understand those who are extremely vulnerable or elderly. Yeah, it's worthwhile having. In the same way that when I get elderly, I'm going to have the flu jab. When I get elderly, I will probably have the COVID vaccine.
But the difference is
I've got a lot of time in me yet before that.
The difference is, though, obviously the flu jab has had years to be tested and proved to be an effective vaccine, whilst this one is totally experimental. Did you hear the thing about the British Airways pilot starting?
I saw you share it.
Yeah. See, we don't know much about this because obviously British Airways don't want to reveal much. But it is interesting that they said in their tweet, 4 members of our pilot community have passed away. But contrary to reports online, there is no link between them, which leads me to think there definitely is a link between them.
At the same point, that to play devil's advocate, that could just be almost willingness to associate it there. It's the Streisand effect. If you say it's definitely not that, then people will start thinking that. Whereas if they hadn't said anything, people probably wouldn't have been thought too much into it.
Mm. I've been listening to a podcast. I bet you're a fan of it already, because it's well up your sort of street.
Yeah.
The Dark Horse podcast with Brett Weinstein.
Yes, Brett Weinstein is very good.
Yeah, I was listening to that earlier, and that was really good. And I like the one he actually had the person who founded mRNA technology.
Yeah.
And they were basically saying that the spike protein, there is some proof that it is dangerous because it doesn't actually stay in.
No one's saying it's definitely dangerous, but that because there's that doubt, you can't say definitely safe. And it's a case of this is how science works. There needs to be a equally valued discussion on with peer review there, because if you're just silencing any counter opinions and evidence against, you're fitting the evidence to suit your conclusion, which is not how the scientific method has ever worked.
Yeah, it's the science. How do they say it? It's open science. It hasn't been concluded, the science. But
I'm not sure if you saw that thing where someone went undercover into the anti-COVID vaccine and anti-mask groups online, and the conclusion they came up with is actually they're very, very pro-science and want more scientific scrutiny, which is everything I've seen in that sort of side of it.
Well,
they were very surprised by that.
Yeah, I met a load of people through the organisation, the Great Reopening, which is pro opening businesses before the end of lockdown. And I've got to know a lot of people through that. And we have a Telegram group, and we meet up every Sunday at the bandstand in Woking. And this happens all over the country in all the different parks. And all the people I speak to there, we have about 20 people every week, and they're all talking about the science and things which they've read from Dr. Mike Yeadon. These are not anti-science people at all.
Exactly. It's a request for more scrutiny and more transparency, really, because I think ultimately I will admit that I think there are a lot of people that will, even if the evidence does go in the way of making it safe, they will still say no, it's not. But I think majority would say, okay, fair enough, and just have it like that, and just accept that's where the data leads. But the problem is the data is not conclusive and is being treated like it is. Yeah,
it's because people don't know enough about science. Well, that's exactly what the professor said in the podcast today, that we haven't got a scientifically literate population to be able to say what is science and what is good and bad science.
That's certainly an interesting way of looking at it. I'm not sure whether it's wholly right, because I think a lot of people do get science, but a lot of people are, I think, more not aware of the arguments that for want of a better term, the anti-vaxxers are making. Because again, people like us and so forth, we're not anti-vaccinations, we're anti the COVID vaccination. So this misconstruing of terms has lumped everyone in with the traditional anti-vax mums of the United States that don't want to give kids a jab against polio.
Yeah, we're now basically the same as the Westboro Baptist Church. Yeah, that's exactly who we are now.
You're the same as the flat earthers. Well, no.
Yeah.
But even again, there's a reason people still engage with the flat earthers and say, no, here's the evidence.
But I don't know if this is going to, because I do think that we are seeing plenty of deaths from the vaccine. But whether there will be some kind of moment where people realize, damn, we actually made a big mistake here. Probably not. It'll probably just be enough. They'll probably have enough ability to keep it all under wraps as possible.
I would say the inquiry that's going to come out of everything from COVID is going to be the biggest inquiry of all time, but at the same point, it's going to be run by the government or an independent panel appointed by the government.
But they're not going to come out.
You can't hold the government to hold itself to account.
No. But obviously, America isn't going to say that it came from the Wuhan lab. And
If
neither is...
would.
Well, Trump would. That's the only thing we can hope for, is if he gets back in office.
Yep.
But
there were reports of various scientists saying, we didn't want to promote the lab leak theory because we didn't want to support Trump. But now he's out of office. We're willing to promote it. It goes, hang on. This is the big problem with a lot of modern science, that politics has taken a front step to it. That now there are a lot of people that have been unwilling to voice their scientific opinion because people they don't like politically have the same understand the same science in the same way or have the same scientific theories. Does this mean that a lot of the left are going to suddenly become flat earthers because a lot of right wingers support the fact that Earth is round?
I mean, everything's political these days when it comes to any big issue. And I mean, we know that Fauci was involved in the Wuhan lab as well. The only person he seems to be speaking up properly is Senator Rand Paul, who's been absolutely brilliant. Whether he'll actually get anywhere with that, I have no idea.
This is it. What I was saying about Gina Coladangelo. Is it Coladangelo?
No idea.
The woman Matt Hancock had an affair with, her brother, Roberto Coladangelo, works at Partnering Health Limited, a specialist in the provision of urgent and primary care services to NHS patients. Which, and bear in mind, I say in February, the judge ruled that Matt Hancock didn't reveal details of pandemic-related contracts in the right time and so forth.
But he also gave a contract to someone who used to be his neighbour for face masks,
who had never made PPE before.
Who had nothing, had nothing, no business related to PPE ever in his life, and became one of the main contractors for face masks.
It's absolutely a shit show, frankly.
I mean, we do expect absolute, tyranny from the Tories. They just stink of corruption. But this is on a different scale, isn't it? Because it's so open and everyone can see it.
But this is the thing. They're going to get away with it.
But are they going to get punished for it? We've got the Batley and Spen election coming up.
Okay, yeah, but who else are we going to vote? Who else are we going to vote for? Batley and Spen, might go Labour or Lib Dem. Realistically, the best situation that can come out is a Lib Dem resurgence. And that's the best that can be hoped for. Because what's going to happen is, frankly, what's happened to me is that most people are going to say, fuck it, I won't bother voting.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it's all well and good. Don't worry, it's all well and good with smaller parties starting up.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's not going to change anything for the next 20 years or so.
No, I would love Heritage Party to do really well in this election.
I think even you look how a more established party like the SDP is doing.
Oh, terribly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
they've been going for how long?
I would like to point out we actually beat them in Hartlepool as well. So we're the main challenger, not the SDP.
You get my point. That they've been going for so long. Yeah, admittedly, there's still less to draw people away from it. But you just hear political party now and they think, I can't be bothered.
The SDP is a weird party, though. I know you're probably... Definitely. Yeah. Oh, so even you think it's a weird party, okay? Because it's like right-wing socialists. It's like, when's that worked out before?
It's an interesting mix. It's one of those, I kind of get it, but it's one of those, the implementation of their theory would have to be so precise. But you could argue that about any political party, really.
It's a party made for people who are interested in political ideology, and most people aren't interested in political ideology. So, my main goal for Batley and Spen, I've mentioned this on the Facebook group, is for the Heritage Party to smash UKIP, because I'm sick of UKIP now. I want to see the back of them. We need to replace them, and also we need to get all the good UKIP volunteers to join Heritage, because then we'll get some good momentum going then.
That's next Thursday, that by-election, I believe, isn't it?
Yes, it is next Thursday, and we'll stream on Friday, right? So I presume we'll get the tail ends with results there. So that'll be a good one to follow.
There was something going around Twitter earlier about Batley and Spen by-election with Joe Cox's sister being.
Yeah, she's running for Labour, isn't she?
Yes, and she had a run-in with, I believe. Again, I'm not sure the full context of this, but from what I could gather, it sounded like some more fundamentalist Muslims opposing LGBT teaching in schools.
Oh, really? Nice.
And then it turned out that these people opposing her weren't from Batley and Spen and were actually from Birmingham.
Makes sense.
It's very little of what you can actually gather from a shorts video and a couple of comments on Twitter, especially when it doesn't get reported on like this.
Well, I would like to see the Tories get punished in Batley and Spen. I mean, even though, like you say, I would never want Labour to do well because they're communists, and I would never want the Lib Dems to do well because they're fascists. I would still prefer probably the Tories to get punished in some way, even if it was Labour winning, because the Conservatives can't be seen to get away with something like that. It's just smacks in the face of outrageousness.
Oh, definitely.
The health minister breaking the rules publicly, cheating on his wife with a married woman in the health department.
Unless
how has he not lost his job?
Or is fired, his tenure is untenable and it undermines the entire Johnson government's legitimacy.
Exactly, because if Boris Johnson fired him, done. That's dealt with. We get a new health minister, everything, right? So that's basically put him away and solved the issue. But now he's put the whole party into question now, into disrepute.
Now, I will admit, I did not expect Hancock to go today. But I think what has been the problem is the Johnson's... I don't think it was an official statement, but it's come out that Johnson said he accepted his apology and it wants to put a line under the matter, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's where I think they've gone wrong. If they hadn't said anything at all, then they could say, okay, no, then get rid of him tomorrow. Now, if they get rid of him tomorrow, they look like they're going back on what they said.
And I've heard a couple of people say, well, Boris Johnson is just as notorious with his affairs and things like that.
So that's what about him? That's irrelevant.
Yeah, so why would he fire him? Exactly, it's irrelevant. You fire someone who's done something bad, no matter what your personal history is.
I mean, I do get the point of if Boris is doing something similar at the moment, if he fires Hancock for it, then Hancock could very easily say, well, hang on, you fired me for this, and there's evidence of you doing something. So that's something I could see being a thing.
Right, so Boris may have his hands tied into some capacity.
Yeah. That's the only reason I can see them not getting rid of Hancock, is if Hancock has something over Johnson.
Well, it's kind of interesting to me because Boris Johnson's just married Carrie Symonds.
Yeah.
And it was a Catholic wedding as well. And I didn't actually know this, but Boris Johnson was actually baptized as a Catholic.
All right.
And
I suppose it makes sense given his history.
And he can't actually divorce. So if he does have another bonk with a aide or whatever, like
can't actually divorce.
He can't divorce.
Henry VIII. They said the same about Henry VIII. Just saying.
But he can't divorce in the Catholic Church anyway.
Yes.
that's his marriage for life now.
In theory, at least. But again, as I can't remember who said it, but there's this worrying trend of people calling him like Boris, rather than saying no, it's Johnson. It's Prime Minister Johnson. It's Mr. Johnson. because you try and humanize politicians. That sounds really bad. But if you give them, refer to them by their first names only, it makes them feel like they're your cuddly, this sort of cuddly amorphous body that you'd mate down the pub. And it was David Cameron that tried to start this in the UK with the whole "Call Me Dave."
Call Me Dave, yeah.
But Johnson, it stops you being as critical of them. You find out your mates having an affair, you're a lot less critical of them than you find out politicians having an affair.
Yeah, Boris Johnson has a weird relationship with the British public. He is very popular, and it makes me laugh because I hear a lot of people when they talk about Boris, they say, oh, people are giving Boris a hard time, but, he's just doing his best and all that kind of thing. When me and he's not doing his best. He's just lying. He's playing games, yeah.
He's playing the game of politics, and he's doing it very well. In places, at least. But again, like I say, referring to him and other politicians by their first names, Hancock still gets called Hancock. Imagine if everyone was calling him Matt in this.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound right. Boris has gone away because he's got quite a unique... he gave himself a unique name. If everyone's calling him Alex or Alexander, it wouldn't quite work, would it?
Yeah. But this is interesting to me because I can't see Matt Hancock having dirt on Boris or being one to betray him or backstab him. So I can't see that he would be not firing because of what Matt Hancock might do, because no one likes him anyway. There's got to be something more to this. Maybe it's something to do with Dominic Cummings having something. I don't know, but there's something weird going on. Maybe I'm just being too kind to Boris here. Maybe he is just an absolute moron who thinks it's a better idea to.
He's definitely not a moron. He is a very intelligent person.
So can you consider?
Because the bit where he said he
before you ask that though, just quickly, can you conceive of a scenario where Boris hasn't got his hands tied and it's a sensible decision for him not to fire him?
The immediate thought is unless there's no one better, which is worrying. But really,
Matt Hancock.
No, it's terrible for popular opinion of the government as a whole, unless they are going to lift restrictions early, as in lift everything tomorrow and say, no, we're not doing this anymore. Then no, there is no reason for them to keep Hancock or to keep Johnson.
Maybe it's an Oxford University thing because they obviously went to Oxford, didn't they? The Bully Boys.
Even then though, as much as that rampant nepotism is a thing, I don't think that's going to change anything. Right. At most, it might be just to not give Labour the you're getting rid of them because we told you to.
So he's got to have his hands tied here somewhere. But
somewhere down the line. Because, you must remember, ultimately, ministers are still fall under employment law. So they'd have to find a reason for him to, breach of code restrictions could come under that. Maybe it's just they're trying to find the legislative reason for them to get to now office, and they're just trying to buy time. Because
unfair dismissal.
Yeah, ultimately, yeah. Because whilst it said that Johnson was the one who said, put a line under it and all that, well, that came out of Downing Street. I've not seen any source say it was Johnson who said that directly. That's the Downing Street as a political body press statement. Until we had Johnson himself speak on it, which is going to have to happen.
No, Johnson has spoken. He said he has his full confidence. Yeah. I posted this.
I've not seen a direct source of it.
I'll find the source for it because I do remember posting something. Here we go. So this is from The Independent. Boris Johnson says he has full confidence in Minister after aid affair photo. And that's full confidence in quotes. So he did say that.
This is coming from the Prime Minister's spokesman, not Johnson himself.
Sorry, you're right. Yeah, the PM spokesman.
And that's what, once Johnson goes up to question, he knows he's going to have to answer this. And just saying, you've seen his statement, I don't have anything further to add, is not going to be good enough.
I mean, I'd hope that at PMQs, the Labour MPs bring it up.
Oh, they're going to. Labour is incompetent, but they're not that incompetent.
Yeah. I mean, someone has to hammer them on this, because I mean, I still can't get over it. Like, I woke up this morning, I saw the news in the Sun, and I saw it go from the Sun to the Telegraph, the Times, to Sky News, to every news. This was everywhere, all over Twitter. All the normies knew about this.
Yeah.
And still,
well, it came out in the Sun, didn't it?
Yeah, it came out in the Sun originally. Yeah. But yeah, not fired. What was the point you were going to make before I interrupted you?
That was saying about that it come from his spokesperson rather than Johnson himself.
Okay.
But it's the same thing with what's happening with the Euros. There's several thousand VIP supporters being allowed to come over to the UK without having to quarantine or isolate to be able to watch the football. And this is because FIFA turned around to the government and said, okay, if you don't allow this, we're going to move the final to Rome instead.
Is this a select group of rich people, or is this a load of fans?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Well, select group of rich fans and so forth. How Ascot's still being able to go ahead pretty much the same. And this is the thing. This is what the government is going to have to face the harsh criticism on, is that you're getting one rule for thee and one rule for me. Either we're all in it together, as the government keeps on saying, or we're not. At which point, people are going to start getting fed up.
Well, sure. I can't see a vast amount of people not being pissed off by this, including Tories, because it's funny, actually, because I'm a member of a few Tory Facebook groups, and a lot of them have stayed very quiet. However, some have said, what do you think about this? And all the comments, pretty much, there are a few here and there which are like, well, I don't care about their private life. It's all the media.
I do get that to an extent. On one hand, I don't care about politicians' private lives. I care about it when they're doing it in their work time, however.
Exactly. That's the difference. But the vast majority of the comments, even from paid Tory members, they're saying this is bringing the party into disrepute. This is not good. So even the Tories, who for most of the time are bootlickers, to be honest, even they're saying this is bad.
Oh, definitely. I just find it all fascinating because it's not there's been nothing all day about it, really, apart from that bit at the start. That's it. And I don't know how the government or Labour is going to try and properly respond and capitalise on it.
Well, that's
my
the thing.
My big worry is that Labour won't.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. If Labour were at all competent and not deranged communists, they would capitalise on this well. And to be honest, Keir Starmer, to be fair to him, is the sort of person who should be capable of capitalising on it. But the thing is, Labour have been their name has been discredited so much, and for good reason. So it's hard to see them, like you say, capitalise on it. Also, just quickly, the by-election recently, I've forgotten where it was, but the one where the Lib Dems won. Yeah. Wasn't it really strange that you heard nothing about that in the news?
Oh yeah, well, no, that was reported on.
Really, because
most of the news, most of the analysis of it wasn't on the news. I'll give you that. Most of the analysis that I saw of it came on social media.
Yeah, but you're talking about leading up to the election.
No, after it.
No, that's the thing. I don't remember hearing anything about that election before the election happened. Isn't that strange?
There was a little bit. Not not massive, but at the end of the day, ultimately, we place a lot more emphasis on politics than most people. And by-elections generally don't make news.
I think the Batley and Spen one is
It
probably
will do
more.
because of Joe Cox.
Yeah, that's probably the reason, actually, now that I think about it. But that by-election is going to be fire now because of everything that's happened. It's come just in time.
All predictions are going to be out the bloody window now.
Yeah. So we got an interesting bag of candidates. We got a lot of right-wing parties standing in these seats now. So obviously we've got Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, obviously. George Galloway standing there, which is quite interesting.
Okay.
We've got Reform, I think, which I suspect will do terribly, like in Hartlepool.
Let's have a look. I've got a list of the candidates here.
And have we got Reclaim? I'm pretty sure we've got Reclaim too, haven't we?
I've got Rejoin EU.
I'll rejoin the EU, yeah.
UKIP is putting up Jack Thompson. Yeah, okay. This is going off of Wikipedia, so then they aren't. I don't think they'll have everyone. Monster Raving Loony Party's got someone.
Yeah.
Fort Britain is putting Anne-Marie Walters up.
Yeah, I heard that actually. Yeah.
So,
she was on Half the Vote recently. I haven't seen it.
That'd be an interesting one. But what's going to be interesting about this is it's not a secure seat for anyone. Going back, last election was Labour, I believe. I don't think it says actually before that.
Oh no, it's always.
I'd say that it's been Labour majority, but
not by a massive margin.
Yeah,
it's well within the Tories' capability of winning. However, they most likely won't now.
There's a Lib Dem resurgence around 2010, which kind of fits, but obviously Lib Dem lost all the vote share since then. Other than that, it's been pretty equal in how it's been split between Labour and Conservative.
Right, okay.
In terms of vote percentage, anyway. So it's just under 40% voted Conservative-ish, and just under 50 voted Labour. Again, ish.
Ish, yeah. It's one of those weird seats in the Midlands where...
Last time it was 42% to 36%.
I mean, yeah, I can't see a massively high Labour vote.
Lord, no.
It would be kind of perverse if the Tories did win it after all this. And I'm not sure how I'd feel about that, because obviously I don't want Labour to win, but I don't want the Tories to win. And I don't want Lib Dems to win. So, but I think no matter what, I probably would prefer Labour to win just to tell the Tories that they're a bunch of wankers.
Labour winning anything doesn't tell the Tories anything. I think, just
to make Boris Johnson think that, oh shit, why did I keep Matt Hancock? That was a really bad, stupid thing.
I don't think they make the connection. I really don't.
No, they probably wouldn't, to be honest. Yeah.
And also, I'm not sure the connection would translate if there was one. I think a lot of people are going to vote more locally, or more focused on local issues.
Well, yeah, I understand that, and there is.
Although it's funny, this isn't going to swing over any of the hardcore Tory voters or the hardcore Labour voters either way. Nothing either of them are going to do is going to do that.
So you think the political consequences of this are going to be pretty close to nothing?
In the short term, yes. In the long term, like I said, I think it's completely undermining Johnson's government, and they're going to be struggling for legitimacy.
But the only way that
in an election, if they keep Johnson, I think the Conservatives will struggle, unless he changes things after restrictions have lifted and actually really turns the country around, which is a possibility, I suppose, but it seems unlikely. However, I do think that Labour aren't providing a tenable opposition either. So I think next general election, we're just going to see a massive fallout or massive drop-off in terms of voter turnout.
Mm.
I think a lot of people just aren't going to bother.
Yeah. I mean, I am persuaded by what you're saying, actually, and I do see this as possibly not a turning point or anything like that, but just one of those little things which digs into the validity of the Johnson government.
And also, a lot of people that are there's sort of two crossed arguments I find with Labour and Conservatives. People who either like Labour's policies, but they don't like Labour's policies, but they don't like the Conservatives. And so people will either say, okay, they might have these policies, but at least they're not corrupt as the Conservatives are. Or they say they might be corrupt, but at least they don't have the policies Labour are. And this isn't going to win over either side of those. And these are the voters they need to be concentrating on most each, because they're the voters that would swing to the other side if there was a bit of change.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is all prime for the smaller parties to start doing better, because people are hopefully starting to realise that the two-party system is not going to cut it.
I don't think most people have that depth of thought to politics. Most people aren't that politically aware and just think, okay, all politicians are the same, regardless of the party, regardless of the size of the party. Mm-hmm. Let's just not vote.
And that's what frustrates me, because a lot of people, they don't think themselves as holier than thou, but they do say, oh yeah, politicians are useless and everything. But you're not doing anything by voting, trying to hold these people to account.
That great argument that could have been made about Auschwitz, to bring in Moore's Law, that if all the prisoners at Auschwitz had revolted together and worked together, they could have easily overpowered the guards because they outnumbered them 14-1, if not more. But they didn't. Because they didn't have the collective will to do so. They didn't see it as wild. They didn't see it as actually something terrible to do. Now, if everyone decided, everyone who just doesn't care decides, no, we're going to get out and vote tomorrow and vote for the parties that might actually change something, vote for who we actually care about. Yeah, it would change. But it won't, because that's not going to happen realistically.
Yeah, so really we are getting the people we deserve, because as a populace, we haven't really been holding people to account.
It's ultimately apathy. Democracy is breeding apathy, or our version of democracy at the moment is breeding apathy.
Yeah.
Partly down to the politicians and the governments we've had, and partly down to the system itself. Which is amazing this short of a time after the high voter turnouts we had around Brexit. But now people are saying, oh, yeah, well, I just can't be bothered.
I mean, it's a shame, because at least under the UKIP era, we managed to capitalise on that to a good extent. Obviously, we got 4 million votes in 2015, which was obviously a great result. Obviously, it didn't translate. It translated into 2 MPs, which were switchovers from the Tories. But yeah, it does seem like we're just heading into this era of voter apathy. Yeah. But this is surely prime grounds for a party like the Heritage Party. Even if we won't be attracting large numbers of people, if we can attract the enthusiastic volunteers just to get things going.
I mean, in theory, yes. But again, I think this is also speaking to a wider part of what's happening culturally. There's a lot of people just getting burnt out on it and just saying, I don't care to fight it. I mean,
are we living in a dying civilization, Adnan?
I don't. As much as people like to cite us being similar to the fall of Rome, I don't buy that quite as much. We don't have
the British Empire fell a long time ago, to be honest.
The biggest cause in the fall of Rome, whilst it had a societal decline in itself, it would have continued and struggled along like that. I think, personally, at least, and if there were not the outside threat of military force. And we are in the modern age where we, as a Western side, generally do not have the outside threat of military force.
No.
Yet.
I mean, there's Russia, but that's China. All. Yeah, China's the real threat. Russia's
But
the red
again, I don't
herring.
think China could really muster it realistically.
I can't see us ever going to war with China personally.
If we did, again, it would be a very short war, in which case
Yeah,
everyone would be fucked.
yeah, exactly. And even China knows that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, China's also got a lot of empty land that they can just say, yeah, no, we'll start again in.
Yeah. All the buildings we made are all shit apartment blocks anyway. We'll just build some more of them. Could you
Just
lose a
pause.
few million people? It's not a big deal.
Oh, so what
Yeah.
else other than Matt Hancock's sex life has been going on?
Well, I got back from Mexico a week ago. I
How
went.
what are the restrictions in Mexico, if any? How is that?
Okay, so they're doing the face mask thing. So whenever you go in a supermarket or any shop, you wear a face mask. Um,
Do they have the same idea of exemption in the UK? Where it's like, no, I'm exempt, and everyone leaves you alone.
Maybe, but I don't think people really care too much over there about that. It's hard to know because obviously I don't speak the language, but there were some people wearing the face masks outside as well. So they do like a face mask in Mexico. Everything else, everything was open. I couldn't see anything not open. They had like a few little barriers here and there in public to stop people using things. And I think they did the thing where, actually, no, they didn't. I think some restrooms you'd have like some of the sinks blocked off. So it was very much like England in that sense.
Speaking of that one, speaking of
Yeah.
President that being blocked off. So I was at Blue Water the other day. Lovely,
Yeah.
That's a lovely little shopping centre.
It's a massive shopping centre.
It is.
Yeah.
But I went into the toilets then. You know, as you expect, the urinals are every other one blocked off, same with the sinks. They've done the same with the cubicles.
Yeah. Wow.
I just find that it's already blocked off. There is a physical barrier between each one.
Yeah.
Or do they expect everyone to just lean their head under that little gap at the bottom and start coughing?
Well, yeah, you do a slight cough, it goes down, goes under.
Obviously,
before you know it.
It just seemed to me at the height of ridiculousness there.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, to get back to the Mexico situation, they had all that, but as far as I could see, everything was open. So I think pretty much Mexican society didn't shut down like we did in the UK because they can't afford to. People are poor there. They're not going to get benefits. And so Mexico just carried on as normal. But obviously they did introduce things like the masks. And apparently they got shipped a load of AstraZeneca vaccines from America because America decided they didn't want them because of when they heard about the blood clots. So my girlfriend jokingly said that America was basically giving them their trash. But I mean, I had a great time there, and I wouldn't say that Corona put any damper on things. I was going out eating tacos and having a good time. So society's moving there. I mean, society's moving here, to be honest. People say it's a lockdown, but it's a lockdown in name only, really, isn't it?
In many places, but on the business end, it is definitely not a lockdown in name only. The amount of, especially in hospitality, you got a lot of businesses that you're forcing people to only be able to sit in certain size people and certain distance apart and so forth. Now, in a premises that doesn't have much room, that makes a big difference.
Well, pubs can only have about
pubs that rely on being able to stand up at the bar.
But it's about 50% capacity in pubs is the rule, right? Something like that.
Yeah, give or take. But that's fine for a lot of places that are food focused. But for a lot of the wet-led places that generally tend to require people being at the bar, especially, like I say, smaller businesses. If I go down to my local, it's a little micro pub. Now, all the people you can fit seated, if you wanted, you could fit them all around the same bit of the bar. We generally would spread out a bit anyway, because you don't want to be all cramped in together anyway. But now, if all the seats are stuck in the main bit, I'd have to sit around the corner, and I can't just sit and talk to my mates and just turn up. Whereas in the past, I just stand near them. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's absolutely absurd. It's unfortunately really affecting business, let alone events, let alone places that rely on having live music or theatre performances. You know, I absolutely commend what Andrew Lloyd Webber's done. Just said, no, I'm going to open anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, small businesses have been hurt the hardest. We're all well aware of that.
Yeah.
I think there's
doesn't care about small businesses because that's not who they're thinking of. They're thinking of
corporations.
They're thinking of chains. Everything is a chain. Everything is a big business. It doesn't matter that the local butchers can't open because the chain at Morrison's can.
Yeah, and obviously it's been great for people like Morrison's and devastating for the former. Yeah, so in that sense, yeah, there is a lot of harm for lockdown, but yeah, it's difficult because people aren't aware so much of that stuff, really, are they? Because obviously most people don't run pubs.
People don't think about it. And again, as you said, it looks like a lockdown in name only for the most part. Again, but then why do we still have to wear masks in stores if the restrictions aren't there? Because they are there still. And
Well,
it becomes more an exercise in normalizing it. Because if it was just a lockdown in name only, you wouldn't see people wearing masks.
That's true.
That wouldn't be considered. 2 years ago, if there was a restriction to put masks in, you would consider that imposing.
Although Rishi Sunak has actually said that as soon as the restrictions are lifted, he will be the first one to take his mask off. So I do think
politicians can say things. Now, I think Sunak has a little bit more integrity than most, but again, that's not saying much.
He's probably the first in line to take over from Boris Johnson if there is any fallout at any point from any of these scandals or future scandals. I can very much see him. Whether he'd be a good prime minister or not, I can't say. I wouldn't have much hope with the Tories.
Again, I think it's all just you can't. It's the biggest problem in politics. We don't have big names anymore. We have the names of the people who are in government, but there aren't big names in politics. There's no Tony Benns or anything.
Yeah, no big, good characters with integrity.
There's no one you say they're definitely going to be a prime minister in the future. It's just maybe it'll be Patel, maybe it'll be Sunak.
I've really gone off Patel. Have you?
She's been very ineffective in places.
It just seems like everything she does is all bluster. None of it actually matters.
Yeah. Do you see why I'm getting very apathetic with a lot of politics? You look at the marches that have been going on in London every Saturday.
Yeah.
How many times has the BBC actually reported on that? I'm going to go tomorrow because I suspect tomorrow, especially after what's coming out today, tomorrow is going to be a big one.
So you're going tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant!
I wasn't going to. I didn't have any plans tomorrow, but I thought as soon as that came out, I thought this is going to be something tomorrow.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. I'd like to go myself, but I can't really afford it at the moment after spending all my money in Mexico.
Go on, it'll be a bit of fun.
But yeah, I do hope it's a good turnout. I'll be interested to hear from my anti-lockdown friends on Sunday how it went. But yeah, I
think there is one tomorrow anyway. But
there definitely is. I've tried to find info about it. Apparently, they don't release details till around 8 o'clock. It's almost.
That said, given there was something I saw on Twitter, and I know you don't have Twitter, but it was a woman being accosted by the police. I can find it. They're saying, we can't arrest you in your own home, which alone is, funny enough, they've come up and knocked on our door and said, we can't arrest you, but we still want to talk to you. So if you come outside, we can arrest you. Where is it? I'll try and find it. But they're really saying because you've been breaching lockdown restrictions and such forth. Let me find the response to this. Yeah, they're saying, we can't arrest you, but you've been posting on social media that you're going to this thing tomorrow and so forth. It's like, sorry, what? It's absolutely pathetic. And bear in mind that they're trying to arrest me for protesting because these mass gatherings are technically illegal. Yeah. I get that. But the fact that mass gatherings in terms of protests are illegal should be absolutely terrifying, regardless of whether you agree with the protest, what's being protested or not.
Yeah.
The way the government acted after the Sarah Everard protests, where the police acted there, people actually cared because there was a bit more of a mass consciousness, and it was more socially acceptable to support that protest, even though the numbers were smaller than a lot of the anti-lockdown protests. But, God forbid we actually, actually tweet ideas with a bit of fairness.
It is ultimately true. I don't know where this is from, but I've heard it a few times that people don't want freedom necessarily. They want security. And
every politics is a trade-off between freedom and security. And there's that wonderful quote from Benjamin Franklin that is, "He who gives up essential freedom for temporary security deserves neither." Actually, I believe the actual word is to purchase temporary security, because it was actually about a very specific event in American history where people gave
independence.
No, it wasn't to do with American independence. It was after that, I believe. It was, I believe, it was a group of farm owners trying to bribe the government and were giving up their freedoms to get that security from the government. It's to purchase temporary security. But even then, I think still the idea of it can be extrapolated to that understandable point. And I think ultimately, for a society to function, there needs to be some imposition on freedoms. If you have rampant freedom, you have anarchism, which is not, and ultimately, order will arise from chaos in that respect. There will always be free associated business is a form of order. That would happen. You would get that happening, saying, I'm exclusivity trade deals, saying, I'm going to trade with you only. Well, that starts a hierarchy and an order. Then you stop having complete freedom. That's an imposition on freedom.
Yeah.
It becomes a unilaterally recognized central authority. So everything is that trade-off. But it's where we draw the line and where we recognize it. And where we have not had a society where we have had much threat to our security, the government is able to jump on the opportunity of there being one. Or at least the perception of there being one.
But there is no line when it comes to our country of freedom and what crosses that. There is, but there isn't.
In theory, there is. There isn't. That's again where legislation comes into place and what people will accept. It's disheartening. I have lost a lot of faith in Britain, to be honest. But obviously, we fight on and everything. Yeah,
but it's hard to see. I can't see liberty ever really coming back in a true sense to Britain. I see very much America as the last bastion.
I suppose I'm actually surprisingly an optimist in this, in that I think it will, because I think we are starting to see a cultural pushback and shift. Look at, did you see the thing about Mumford & Sons?
Yeah, that was fascinating. Yeah.
The band member who posted Sport of Andy No's book a while ago. All that, yeah. But he's now said, no, he's resigned from the band. And I really respect his integrity. And I also respect why he apologized when he did. Because ultimately people were saying, oh no, it's cowardice to apologize. But no, he was doing it to stop his bandmates and the people he cares about getting flack and attention, which I think is respectable.
Yeah.
Protecting the people you care about is a very honourable thing, especially if it goes against, if you have to go against your morality or something you consider moral to protect those you care about. Yeah, I think that's honourable. In the same way, take to the extreme example, most people would kill to protect people they care about, while still saying that killing goes against their morals, because it generally does. But you're doing it in protection of something and someone you care about. Yeah. Someone's asked, what time will I be in London? I don't know yet. I haven't actually checked what time it starts. I think it's normally about 1 o'clock it starts, but I don't know when or where. So, but I'm very easy to find and get hold of. So give me a message and so forth. Let me know.
Well, I have my groups where I expect to possibly see something about where they're meeting up. Is it normally Parliament Square or something like that?
It varies. It varies.
Yeah.
But sometimes they do Trafalgar Square. Sometimes, I say it depends where and how long the march is going. But Parliament Square is normally a safe bet. Tell you what, I'll start.
Yeah, you can reach out.
I won't have a look up now because going on about this on a stream probably is not is the best way to get looked into by the government. Not that anyone's actually.
Oh no, I don't support anyone going to this protest.
Of course not.
I find it absolutely repulsive.
Journalistic purposes, obviously.
Yeah, as a pure journalism, of course.
Obviously. I'm just going out to London. Just don't want to go down in London.
If you were thinking of perhaps doing some journalism there also, maybe you could get in touch with Adnam on Facebook and maybe sort something out there. I miss going to London for a good old protest, to be honest. So yeah, I'll be sad not to be there. But
I think the last time I was up there for anything political was Brexit Day with you and all the others. Yeah,
that was good. I mean, the show that Nigel Farage and them lot put on in celebration was crazy.
It was a great afternoon.
Well, I'm thinking about their video which they did and stuff.
Yes.
It was great fun, but let's not forget Nigel Farage, his show and everything was a bit cringe.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love how they basically attribute Brexit to Margaret Thatcher, even though she was quite supportive of the EU in many aspects.
I mean, well, ultimately, let's face it, politically, anyone 8 to 10 years older than us is of a different, generally at least, is a little bit cringe in the same way that we're going to be cringe to a lot of Zoomers. Because we are in that weird generation that grew up with half our lives being pre-internet, and then suddenly the internet appeared and everything is like it is now. It doesn't seem there's much political difference between 2012, 2016, and now, but there really was. But then you go back to 2008, and everything was completely different.
Yeah.
Even you go back further, take it back further, and it goes even further.
But I really like
all the youngsters these days. All the Gen Z these days.
You do sound old when you say youngsters.
Yeah, I know. I realise that one. Gen Z don't know the pain of dial-up.
I actually really like the younger generation, the generation after us. That from the conversations that I've had with them, a lot of them are quite switched on.
Oh, definitely. I'm not saying they're not. It's not a criticism.
Yeah.
I think we're just in that weird in between where we've semi-acclimatized to this mass deluge of information that happens, and now we're seeing a generation that's grown up, bombarded by information. And even then, we're not truly seeing it because, like I said, the people that are turning 18 today, well, they're only born in the early 2000s. Give it another 10 years, then we're going to start seeing the weird culture, I think.
I mean, we are seeing it, really. It's just... I
think it's going to get weird. It's going to
get weirder.
Yeah, because, even then, when people were young in the late 2000s, it was still kind of a lot more relatable to the late 90s than it was today.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the 90s and the noughties could go together quite well.
Because it is that decade. It's those 2 decades of things very rapidly changing, and I think the human brain has really adapted to this bombard of information, and it's something we need to get used to. There's a wonderful parallel that I see between our generation's use of the internet and slightly the generation before us as well, in terms of use of the internet, and cowboys.
Okay.
Because the internet is this frontier, and it was. And what we're seeing is this centralization of the internet, everything being, everything is happening on things like Reddit and Twitter. And when it used to be, everything had its own little message board somewhere. Which was that little beauty, I think, that little free little place you could go. And internet was a sort of anything goes sort of place where you had general consensus will of everyone saying, well, no, we don't like that, we ain't going to do that. Whereas now, especially now, governments have clocked onto it as well. They're trying to make it more regimented and more sanitized. Whereas, if people want to just fuck off into the middle of nowhere and just have a little farm, a small village, why shouldn't they be able to? In the same point, if people want to just have this little small community on the edge of the internet somewhere, why shouldn't they be able to?
I mean, I love all the stuff I hear with the subreddits and things like that. The thing is, I don't look at the Reddit at all myself, but I like the people who...
It's a shithole.
Huh?
I don't blame you. It's a shithole.
But it seems like a lot of interesting things do happen on Reddit, such as Wall Street Bet. Sorry, Wall Street Bets, not Wall Street.
I've been on Reddit for, 8-9 years? And again, it's very, very different from what it was back then. There wasn't this hegemonic hive mind as much back then. It was generally this case of, okay, let's just provide a hosting platform for all these different communities, rather than let's have the Reddit hive mind. I remember whilst I was going on Reddit, I was also going on a lot of local message boards. You get message boards for enthusiasts about this particular thing or whatever. And a few of them do still exist, don't get me wrong. But
the Trump group famously got kicked off, and they had to set up their own new platform, didn't they? And it's now the Trump.win.
Remember, but this is also, I think, back to the early days of YouTube. YouTube was convenient because it was centralized. But before that, and even during its early days, a lot of people tried to start their own sort of thing and host all their videos on their site. Just YouTube was more convenient for them otherwise.
Well, I've totally given up on Twitter now, and I'm keeping Facebook because Facebook is so far-reaching. But the one which I have used and I've stuck with it big time is Telegram. I'm a big fan of Telegram, and I
barely use Telegram.
See, that for me, that's where I
just barely use it. To me, it's more Messenger, but not as many people are on it.
No, but this is, for me, this is the one where this is where all the action is, because you can follow channels and it's just like having a Twitter, but you don't have to scroll through loads of bullshit. You can actually just go to people you like, boom, and just see.
Well, you can still kind of do that with Twitter, really.
Well, you can, but the problem is Twitter, I left Twitter because they got rid of Trump, which to me was unbelievable, kicking the president off the...
I mean, don't get me wrong. Twitter is a cesspit. But it's probably what I would rather keep than Facebook. I keep Facebook just because it's convenience in terms of contacting people that I have in terms of my personal life. Twitter is the thing I would be interested in politically wise to keep. Because in terms of information dissemination, it's great. And again,
that's true.
It's got a very strong bias like any other site. You just have to be aware of that bias and work with it.
Well, yeah, for me, they crossed the line, so I could never go back to Twitter.
Do you remember where Twitter got its big hurrah sort of thing, where it sort of became a major thing?
No, I was reasonably late to Twitter.
It was the Arab Spring.
Oh yeah, that's what. Yeah,
because the Arab
people
Spring
said
would
it
not
was a
have
game
happened without
changer.
Twitter. Yeah, Twitter
Yeah.
was reasonably big before then, but when the Arab Spring happened, Twitter blew up because of it. And again, the Arab Spring could not have been coordinated without Twitter.
I do very much see Telegram being the replacement for that, though, for conservatives, because I don't think conservatives can call Twitter home anymore.
I can definitely see that.
But going back to what you were talking about, the Zoomers, as I like to call them, and Nick Fuentes also, I do find it interesting because I feel that the Mumford and Sons generation, I think these people in our generation.
Do you mean the generation of people who like Mumford and Sons?
Oh no,
the people that are in Mumford and Sons.
No, their age group of people in their early 30s
who are in the band.
No, just people of the same age as Mumford and Sons.
As the same age as people who are in the band. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, their generation. That's what I mean. I feel that this generation very much grew up and were basically taught, right wing, Hitler, bad, left wing, cuddly or whatever. But I feel that the Zoomers, which are growing up, they're growing up and into a landscape of like Black Lives Matter, LGBT craziness. They don't have the same spectrum of, this is bad, this is good. Like they don't have the same stereotypes, I don't think, as our generation have.
I do see that, but I don't think. I think also we grew up in a generation of very much right-wing bad.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. Also I think that's probably down to the right-wing leaders at the time. I mean, George Bush.
Well, yeah.
And George Bush was right target for just comedy. But it's an interesting because we generally grew up mostly in a left-wing government. Well, in a Labour government, which New Labour again would not necessarily call fully left-wing, but we grew up in an officially left-wing government with a right-wing United States followed by Barack Obama. And I distinctly remember during the 2008 US election, so this is when I was sort of starting to get actually interested in politics, and I was supporting Hillary Clinton over Barack Obama.
Oh dear.
Yeah, no, but this thing, I didn't even consider the Republicans because, again, at the time, the Republicans generally were associated with the evangelicals and
nasty right-wing people.
Yeah, they were. But it's now interesting to see it. People have described it in terms of the new atheism community and so forth. That some people were opposing it, old religious, and so forth, and then there was this split where some went into the social justice side and some went into, I want to say, the rationalist side, for want of a better term, but something along those lines, the liberalists, our sort of politics. And it's interesting to see a lot of the left espousing today very similar ideas to what the likes of Jack Thompson was saying about Grand Theft Auto 15 years ago, and that they would have been massively opposed to. And politics in many places have come full circle there.
Right.
It's absolutely bizarre.
Yeah. I was going to make a point then. I've totally forgotten what I was going to say. America in general is crazy.
I mean, what was it? Something like there's been 100 murders in the past week in the Chicago area alone. I don't quite know. I may be massively wrong, but
it's all coming to a head now. I know what I was going to say actually. I've been listening to various things since I got back from Mexico, but one of my favorite people to listen to recently is Michael Malice. Did you hear his alarm outside? No, that's me. Did you see the Michael Malice interview with Sargon of Akkad?
I've got it on my list of things to watch.
That is very good. But I noticed he also did an interview with Jordan Peterson. He's got a new book out at the moment. but I very much like his analysis of what's going on in America and his view that these people's opinions, they can't be changed, and the ultimate solution is for segregation and for conservatives to stop trying to talk to left-wing people and to just carve their own nice society.
Yeah, it does. Actually, I don't disagree with that idea.
Yeah.
It's a big one I have with a lot of media stars. They say, "Oh, it's for everyone," and I always think, no, it's not. It's for anyone. And there's a distinct difference there. If something is for everyone, it has to cater to what everyone wants. If something is for anyone, there is no restrictions to someone liking it. And this was the big thing. Star Wars is for everyone. No, Star Wars is not for everyone. There's a lot of people that just don't like Star Wars and don't like that sort of media. They don't like space opera, whatever. That's fine. They're perfectly not entitled. Star Wars does not have to change to get them to like it. And the same can be said for politics. That, okay, countries have gone quite big, and country doesn't have to be for everyone. It can be for anyone who wants to come there. But if you don't want to, you're welcome to have your own little place somewhere else.
But that's the problem. When you have a left, like in America, which is totally fighting the whole cultural identity.
I think they think they're fighting for the idea of things should be for anyone, when they're pushing for the things should be for everyone.
Where is this philosophy that you've amalgamated? Where have you got this from?
Just a lot of it's over time. Because again, I'm a big Star Wars fan, to say the least. And I've seen that since the Disney takeover of it. And it's this idea of, let's push to be progressive. And this is like, Star Wars has never really been anti that. It's just not been in your face with any... Like, in fact, it hasn't been even in your face in the fact that Star Wars is directly inspired by the Vietnam War. But at the same time, most people don't take... Yeah, the fact that you just said really shows that it wasn't shoved in your face to that extent.
Yeah.
There were political themes if you knew what to look for and were willing to look. But it was never a case of, here's a political message, you must accept it.
Yeah.
So, and again, I'm a member of the Tolkien Society. So when that whole thing happened with Tolkien, that's been going around on various things.
Remind me what happened to Tolkien. Did they decide one of his characters was gay, or
no? So the Tolkien Society, we're an academic society that the amount of academic works they do into analysis of Tolkien's.
Oh, they've got like a
legendarium. There's been analysis of the flora and fauna in Tolkien. It's really minute in places. It's amazing. There's some really, really interesting stuff, literary and historically, and just both inside the universe itself and the idea of analysing and comparing it to Tolkien's experiences. Now, Tolkien hated the idea of allegory as well. So nothing in Tolkien is ever a direct comparison to historical events, despite what people seem to think. But because he's viewed allegory as lazy.
Yeah, the orcs aren't representative of the Nazis or anything like that.
No, and similarly, people will say, it's a representation of the fact that he grew up in rural England, which he did. And it's a representation of his views on the First World War, which he fought in, and increased industrialization. Mordor's meant to represent industrialization. Well, no, it's not. There's definitely themes you can carry across, but it's not an allegory. Tolkien himself said it is not allegory. Allegory is lazy. So, anyway, Tolkien's son, Christopher Tolkien, died last year. He was the president of the Tolkien Society. He was generally the gatekeeper and custodian of Tolkien's works. This is why the films could not use anything from the Silmarillion, because Christopher Tolkien said, no, I'm not letting you have the rights to that. Similarly, with The Hobbit, they weren't allowed to either. That's why they had to invent a load of stuff. But they were allowed to use stuff from certain appendices from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, but not stuff from the Silmarillion. So Lord of the Rings was very gatekept because Christopher Tolkien wanted his father's work to be kept in a certain way. He was part of that. He was also helping to finish off his father's work. And a lot of the notes he helped compile and publish.
Anyway, get to the point, Adnan.
Yes. So the Tolkien Society, last month or so, they do seminars every so often, especially recently, there's a lot of the video seminars. And a recent set of them, in fact, I'm going to find the list of the names, but they were it was a set of seminars described as inclusivity and diversity in the works of Tolkien.
Mm.
Which, you can already hear alarm bells ringing in my head there. When you have something talking about trans representation in the works of Tolkien, well, that didn't really come into his consideration, frankly.
Isn't this just a result of people with low testosterone?
No, I don't think it's more a case of people saying, no, we want to make Tolkien about, for us. No, it's for anyone. If you like Tolkien, it's for you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to change it and analyze it and so forth to make it about what's interesting you like. So here, some of the seminar titles. The Problem of Pain, Portraying Physical Disability in the Fantasy of J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, again, actually in itself, that could be kind of an interesting subject of how do the Gondorians look after their wounded, yada yada. But in the rest of it, it's not. For example, Pardoning Saruman, the queer in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Who was reading queer into Saruman? He has a fucking angel. Quite literally, he's an extra. He's created by the gods. He's one of the Maya. The wizards are literally angel god things. There's also the Invisible Mother, Tolkien's dwarf women and feminine lack. Yeah, because there's a running joke that dwarf women are confused as men because they also have beards. That's it. Dwarves don't exist in Tolkien generally.
Here's a slightly offbeat question. Remember the whole thing with J.K. Tolkien and how she decided to come out one day that
J.K. Rowling,
she decided to come out one day that Gandalf was gay, right?
Dumbledore,
not Gandalf. Sorry, just shows you how in depth my knowledge is of sci-fi. Although it's not really sci-fi, is it?
It's fantasy, but
fantasy, yeah. Do you think that when she wrote that, she actually wrote it thinking that he was gay, or do you think that she just suddenly decided he was gay later on?
I think it's possible she did think it at the time, but it never came up as relevant in the text, so she didn't mention it, which is kind of the way it should be. So there was nothing to contradict in the text, and if you're saying, well, in my notes, that's what it was, but it never came up as relevant, that's fine. Okay, why do I care?
And now she's one of the most prolific conservative rights activists now. So
it's seen as a turf, yeah. I don't. It's a fascinating thing with a lot of fantasy stuff because there was this interview with Mark Hamill years ago, who played Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
and someone asked him about Luke being gay, and now in the canon, well, Luke doesn't have any relationship in the films apart from kissing his sister, so it's sort
which is kind of weird. Yeah,
he didn't know his sister, so it's implied that he But anyway. In the books that came afterwards, he got married to a woman and had kids and so forth. But then they were a separate sort of canon anyway. And then with Disney, they got ignored completely.
Oh, they'll be brought back now.
Probably not, but they were a mess.
Yeah. But he'll be gay in the new ones with Disney.
Well, no. Well, he's dead. So, but
that's true.
What he said in the interview was, Luke's meant to be this archetypal hero that is also quite lacking in a lot of character that you can, especially when in the early part of his character arc, that you can put yourself in. He's also the audience proxy to a part. So if you think he's gay, he's gay. And I don't disagree with that to a point, because again, there's none say he isn't, or at very least say that he isn't bi. And okay, It doesn't change his character. It's not an informing part of his character. So someone wants to read and look at it and project themselves onto that character and say, Luke, okay, fine. But it's when that becomes... It's the same issue I tend to have.
It's when it's in your face.
Yeah, well, it's not when it's in the face. It's when it becomes a defining part of someone's character.
Yeah, when it's shoved in your face. As
I've said time and time again, if what you have between your legs, who you like to fuck, or the amount of melanin in your skin is your defining personality trait, you need to be more interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely.
I don't care if people are camp as fuck. That's, that is also often not necessarily tied into their sexuality. At least you know someone who's really, really camp.
Yeah.
It doesn't shove the fact that they like to fuck people of the same sex in your face, and somebody you know straight people with camp as fuck as well.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it as long as they're not teaching sex ed in schools.
Well, no, again, if they can separate their work life and their personal life, I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I'm more referring to the very obvious things which are going on right now with the trans stuff and all this kind of thing. I don't know what the extent to that is, but it doesn't sound very good.
I'm not one of those people that will say, no, I'm completely right on this. I want to have discussions on these sort of subjects.
Do you support gay people being able to adopt?
If they want, sure.
Okay, that's where we disagree. I don't think gay people should be able to adopt, because I think it's much more normal and good for a child to have a man.
There's a difference between whether I think they should and whether I think they should be able to. Now, whether they should, well, I think actually it depends more on the individuals, but should they be able to? Yeah. I think most people should be able to do pretty much most things.
Oh yeah, I'm in favour of liberty in general, but I am conservative.
I get your argument.
Yeah,
both from the religious perspective and from the social perspective as well. But again, my argument is, freedom. Let them do it. If they're not actively arming the kid, then yeah.
Well, if they start putting the boy in a dress and teaching him lesbian poetry.
See, lesbian poetry is questionable because I'm gonna lie, there's a lot of good lesbian poetry, there's a lot of good straight poetry. There's a lot of bad poetry on both sides as well. But I get your point.
All right, they start showing him RuPaul's Drag Race from the age of 5.
Again, this is where I think these discussions need to be had then. Because you can take a perfectly innocent takeaway from things, from drag itself. Because it's been quite a British tradition to show kids drag.
Yeah.
Panto
has it? Panto. Well, that's true, panto, yeah, but that's different.
See? The dame and the panto. Again, yeah, it's different in terms of context. In that, drag there is not stemming from a sexualized tradition.
Yeah. Exactly, it's not sexualized. That's the difference.
But a lot of I'm not saying, because I've never watched Drag Race, so I couldn't comment on that. But you can get a lot of modern drag that isn't sexualized. So it's okay for them to be introduced to that. But I don't have an answer. I don't.
Yeah, if it's like in the theme of something like panto, possibly.
Do you see my point? That, I want to have these conversations, but you guarantee people say, "No, you're a tough."
Well,
you're anti. It's like, no, I want to actually talk about this because it's got depth and complexity.
Well, I do want to wrap this up soon, but there is one story which has just come to my mind, which I can't not talk about, and the big front now, obviously, is the battle for women's sports. And did you hear about in New Zealand
the Olympics?
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, in New Zealand, they had their Olympic New Zealand weightlifting team, and they've got a transgender man who used to be a man, is now a woman. He is like 40-something years old and had his operation basically way past puberty. So he's got all the benefits of being a man, just he's had hormone treatment or whatever afterwards, right? But because he's now on the New Zealand team, it's now kicked off the next New Zealand woman who would have been going to the Olympics, and that's destroyed her, I presume, dream of going to the Olympics because a man has decided that they're perfectly.
I feel it's fair to point out this is actually not a wholly recent thing. The Olympics have allowed transgender athletes to compete since 2004.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard about this.
In 2004, the International Olympics Committee...
It's never happened before. They've never had a transgender athlete compete
as
till now.
As far as I'm aware, I don't know for certain, but from what I can see, yeah, that might be right. That this might be the first case of it actually happening. And...
it will be unbelievable.
Someone who was ranked, I think, 290th or 300th in the men's whatever sport they were competing in. I think it was swimming or diving.
This is the New Zealand one.
I don't think it was.
Oh, this is a different one.
It might have been, but I don't think it was. They transitioned and they are now number one in their country.
It would be. You know what? The way the world is, it would be unbelievable, but I would like to see it happen. I would like to see the New Zealand man win the women's weightlifting, just to show how bonkers this world has become.
I mean, if they do, they do. And it's one of those, I don't disagree in itself with it, but I think it would be a lot better if you had effectively an extra section of the Olympics now. Let's have the transgender section of the Olympics as well. You got male category, female category, trans male, trans female category. But then that is saying that trans women aren't women and trans men aren't men. It's like,
but they're not. So
yeah, I know. Because the whole requirement to be a trans woman is to be a man.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And like at the same point, this is where it's very. I like to be very specific about what I say.
Like Jordan Peterson.
Because again, I think he knows that to be very specific about what you say.
Yeah, well, it's one of his rules, isn't it?
To ensure what you say represents what you mean and that you're not going to be misconstrued.
Yeah.
Now, I should also point out that I do have a few trans friends. And some of them come out to me and I said, I mean it in the nicest way, but I don't care. You're my friend because of who you are, not what you are.
And of course, you have trans people who are against this, like Caitlyn Jenner.
So this is why I'm very particular about how I phrase all of this. When people say trans women aren't women, it's not to say that they should not be treated as society treats women in general socially. But that is also then not to say that women should be treated different from men socially. This is where it then entails a lot of ongoing problems. But trans women are not biological women, but should be treated as women in social contexts.
Yeah, there's nuance to it,
yes.
Where they can be treated like women, but there's certain things where they should not be treated like women, such as women's sport.
Yes, such as medication as well.
Or at least professional, competitive women's sport.
I would agree, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, again, I think this is why sport is one of the more contentious sides of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because sport is, whilst being a physical thing, like the distinction is social. So if you're going to treat them as women, why shouldn't you treat them as women in sport? Well, because they're going to outcompete everyone. Okay. But if you're going to treat trans women as women socially, why not treat them as women in sports, other than the fact that they're going to do well?
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer to that, really.
Anyway, we'll cover this and many more topics on a different occasion.
Yeah, because this is going to lead us down a rabbit hole otherwise.
Yeah, because it's quite a big topic, yeah. So, yeah, good to speak to you, everyone. If you're out at the protest tomorrow doing journalism, good luck.
Please give me a shout and we'll all go for a beer and have a journalistic beer together.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely tune in next week for the Batley and Spen on Friday, 7:00, we'll say.
Yep.
Because it's going to be really interesting to analyse the Batley and Spen elections and see what the Well, they say the outcomes are the ramifications are going to be from that. That's a good word, isn't it?
They'll be interesting regardless of how it turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Adios, amigos.
Bye for now. Damien, you've left it still live.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, you left it still alive with me here.
I didn't actually end the broadcast. Then I just exited. It's okay. I'll end the broadcast now. Okay, over and out.